The strange encounter. The night was quiet, and the forest was dark. Only the sound of wind moved between the trees. The human named Daniel walked slowly, carrying a small lamp in his hand. He lived near the edge of the woods, far from the noise of cities. Life was simple, sometimes lonely, but peaceful. That night, Daniel noticed something strange in the sky. A flash of blue fire cut across the stars. It was not like a normal shooting star. This light moved heavy, broken, and it fell down with smoke. Daniel followed the trail with fear and curiosity. The smell of burned metal touched the air. Trees were broken, and the ground was hot. In the middle of the crash site lay a broken ship. Not big like a warship, but not small like a pod. It hissed with sparks and steam, glowing with strange symbols. Daniel's heart raced. He should have turned back. He knew this was dangerous, but something pulled him closer. Inside the broken ship, he heard a weak sound. A cry, soft and trembling. He pushed through the smoke and bent metal, and then he saw her, a figure curled on the floor. Not human, not like anything he had seen before. Her skin was pale silver, glowing under the firelight. Her hair flowed long and white like frozen rivers. Her eyes were closed, her breathing thin. Daniel froze. She was beautiful but broken. She looked more fragile than dangerous. Her clothes were torn, strange armor and fabric mixed. He could see marks on her body, scratches and burns. It was clear she had been in a fight. And worse, it looked like someone left her here to die. For a moment, Daniel wanted to run. This was an alien. Everyone knew stories. Aliens meant danger, war, or invasion. If he helped her, maybe he would bring death to himself. But as he looked closer, he saw her chest rising slowly, weak but alive. She was not a monster. She was someone abandoned. The alien girl opened her eyes. They glowed faint blue, like starlight trapped in glass. She stared at him without fear, only sorrow. Her lips moved. Words broke from her throat. "Human, please." Daniel stepped back. She could speak. Her voice was soft but cracked with pain. She lifted her arms slowly, shaking, and reached toward him. But she was too weak, and her hand fell to the floor. Daniel's chest tightened. He could not leave her here. He told himself he was only helping because no one deserved to die alone. But deep inside, he felt something strange, something he could not name. Carefully, he pulled her from the wreck. Her body was light, lighter than it should be. She leaned against him, silent. Her skin was cold, yet her heartbeat was fast like a bird's. Daniel carried her back through the dark forest. Every sound made him nervous. The night was no longer safe. He felt watched, like shadows were following. At his small wooden cabin, Daniel placed her on his bed. He gave her water, and she drank with shaking hands. Her glowing eyes never left his face. Finally, she whispered in broken English, "Poor, abandoned. Take me, human. I cook, I clean, I stay silent." Daniel froze. Her words were not the cry of a queen or soldier. They were the words of someone desperate, someone ready to beg for a place. He did not understand why she spoke like this. Why would a creature from the stars lower herself so much? Why did she want to serve him instead of asking for rescue? He looked at her carefully. There was pain in her voice, but also fear, as if she was running from something. Her eyes shone with a silent question. "Will you protect me?" Daniel had no answer. The forest outside was silent again, but the silence felt wrong. He felt danger pressing closer, and he realized this was only the beginning of something far greater. The human and the alien girl sat in the small cabin, one filled with fear, the other with mystery. And above the dark sky, far away, unseen ships moved like predators, watching, waiting, hunting. The strange encounter had only begun. "Take me as your servant." The cabin was silent. Only the sound of fire crackling in the small stove filled the air. Daniel sat in a chair, staring at the strange girl lying on his bed. Her silver skin glowed faintly in the dim light. Her long white hair spilled over the pillow like snow. and her glowing blue eyes followed his every move. Daniel felt uneasy. This was not normal. An alien was in his house. She had spoken to him, and her words were strange. Not a demand, not a threat, but a plea. Take me, human. I cook, I clean, I stay silent. The words echoed in his head. Why would a creature from the stars speak like this? Why would she lower herself to a servant? It made no sense. Aliens should be powerful, advanced, proud. But this girl looked fragile, desperate, almost broken. Daniel asked softly, "Why do you say that? Why do you want to serve me?" The girl turned her face away. Her lips trembled. Her voice cracked like glass. "If I stay without purpose, they will find me. If I stay without service, I will be useless. If I serve, maybe I live, maybe I hide." Daniel leaned closer. Her words were broken but clear. She was running, hiding from something. He wanted to ask who they were, but her eyes shut tight. She whispered again, "Please, do not send me away. I will be silent, human. I will not trouble you. I will be nothing. Just let me stay." Daniel felt a weight in his chest. Her voice was full of sorrow. It was not a trick. This was not an enemy trying to capture him. This was someone begging for safety. But still, his mind warned him. She could be dangerous. Maybe she was hiding her power. Maybe she was using pity as a weapon. Yet, when he looked at her trembling hands, he could not believe she was lying. That night, Daniel gave her food. Just bread and soup, simple human food. She ate slowly, carefully, like every bite mattered. Her glowing eyes softened for the first time. She whispered, "Thank you, human." Daniel asked her name. She hesitated, then whispered, "Leora." It was a name like music, but when she said it, pain crossed her face, as if that name was once a burden. Maybe a name she no longer deserved. Days passed. Leora stayed inside the cabin. She kept her promise. She cleaned the small home. She cooked with strange care, learning human tools quickly. She moved quietly, always watching, always listening. She did not speak much, and when Daniel tried to ask about her people, her ship, her past, she shook her head and whispered, "Silence keeps me alive." But the silence in the cabin was not peace. It was heavy, filled with secrets. Every night Daniel heard faint sounds outside, branches breaking, whispers of movement. Sometimes the sky flickered with lights, like shadows of ships far above, hidden in clouds. Daniel felt eyes on him, not human eyes. Something else was searching, waiting, and every time he asked Leora about it, she lowered her gaze and said nothing. One evening, Daniel returned from the forest carrying firewood. He found Leora kneeling on the floor, her hands pressed together, her head bowed, like a servant before a master. He stood in the doorway, shocked. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. Leora's voice was soft. "I said I serve. I owe you life. I am nothing without your shelter. So I bow, I kneel, I obey." Daniel felt anger rise in his chest. He was not her master. He had never asked her to kneel. "You don't need to do that. I am not your owner," he said firmly. But her eyes lifted, full of fear. "If I do not serve, they will take me. They will destroy me. I must have purpose, or I am already dead." Her words chilled him. Who were they? What kind of people abandoned her? Why did she believe her only worth was to serve? Daniel did not answer. He only told her to stand. She obeyed quietly, but he saw tears in her glowing eyes. She was afraid not of him but of something else, something bigger, something cruel. That night, as he tried to sleep, Daniel heard her whispering softly to herself, words in a strange alien tongue. Her voice was shaky, broken. It was not prayer, it was confession. And though he could not understand the language, the sound of sorrow was clear. Daniel turned and looked at her from his bed. She sat on the floor near the fire, her knees pulled to her chest, her glowing eyes staring into the flames. She looked like a child lost in a world too big for her. Yet Daniel knew she was more than she appeared. He could feel it. This was not just a servant. This was someone hiding a dangerous truth. And in the dark outside, the shadows moved again. Something unseen searched the forest. Slowly, patiently, like hunters closing in on prey. Daniel realized then, taking her in was not just kindness. It was the beginning of a storm. And the storm was coming closer every night. The servant's words were simple. Her actions were humble. But behind her silence lived a secret that could change everything. And soon Daniel would be forced to face it. The human and the alien girl were bound now. Not by chains, not by power, but by a fragile promise of survival. And promises, Daniel knew, could be broken when the hunters arrive. The night grew heavy. The fire burned low. And somewhere in the sky above, unseen eyes watched, waiting for the moment to strike. Silent shadows. The days grew colder. Daniel's cabin, once quiet and safe, now felt different. It was no longer just a home. It was a hiding place. And hiding places always carried shadows. Leora moved through the small cabin with silence. She cooked. She cleaned. She kept her promise. Her hands worked fast. Her eyes stayed low. She never asked for anything. She never complained. But Daniel noticed something strange. She always listened. Her ears turned to the faintest sound outside. Her glowing eyes searched the darkness whenever wind touched the trees. At first, Daniel thought it was fear. But soon, he realized it was more. She was not only afraid. She was expecting something. Waiting for someone. Or maybe something. One evening, Daniel stepped outside to chop wood. The air was sharp, cold, and heavy with silence. But in that silence, he heard it. The snap of a branch. The soft drag of movement in the distance. When he looked, the forest was empty. No deer, no birds, nothing alive. Only trees standing still like watchmen. Daniel carried the wood back quickly. Inside, Leora was standing near the door. Her pale silver skin caught the glow of the fire. Her face was tense. She whispered, "You heard it, yes?" Daniel nodded. "Yes, but what is it?" Her lips pressed together. Her eyes lowered. "Shadows," she said quietly. "They search for me. They do not stop. They do not rest." Daniel felt anger rise. "Then why are you here? Why did you bring them to me?" Leora flinched. Her voice cracked. "I did not choose. I only ran. I had nowhere, no one. I thought, maybe here I could stay. I could serve, I could be nothing. But shadows always follow." Her words cut into him. She was not lying. He saw the fear in her glowing eyes. He wanted to shout, to demand answers, but something inside stopped him. He could see she already carried too much pain. That night, Daniel could not sleep. He lay awake, listening. The forest outside whispered. Sometimes he heard steps, sometimes voices. Not human voices, but low and strange, like wind speaking in broken tones. He tightened his grip on the old rifle by his bed. He hated the sound of waiting. At midnight, he rose and looked outside. Moonlight spilled across the trees. And there, just for a moment, he saw them, dark figures standing among the trunks. Tall, thin, their shapes bending with the shadows. Glowing marks traced across their bodies like fire veins. They stood still, watching, and then they faded back into the forest. Daniel's blood ran cold. He turned back quickly. Leora was awake, sitting on the floor near the fire. Her eyes met his, full of sorrow. "You saw them," she whispered. "Yes," he answered. "They are hunters," she said. "They will not leave until I am taken or I am dead." Daniel sat down heavily. He wanted to ask why they hunted her, but she shook her head. Her lips trembled. "Not yet. Not now. If I tell, you will not let me stay. And if you send me away, I am gone. So I serve, I stay silent. Until you choose, human." Daniel stared at her. She was a mystery wrapped in sorrow. He had taken her in. But every day he felt the weight of that choice growing heavier. It was no longer just about kindness. It was survival. The next morning, he found strange marks near the cabin. Shapes burned into the soil, circles and lines that pulsed faintly with energy. Leora saw them and whispered, "They are close. They mark territory. Soon they will come inside." Daniel clenched his fists. "Then we fight," he said. But Leora shook her head quickly. "No fight. You cannot win. I hide, I serve, maybe they do not see. Maybe they pass, maybe we live." Her words sounded weak, hopeless. Daniel hated it. He was human. Humans fought for life. They did not bow to shadows. That night, as the fire burned low, Daniel studied Leora. She sat quietly, hands folded, eyes lowered. But sometimes, when she thought he was not looking, her face changed. Her eyes shone with something fierce. Not just fear, but anger. Not just sorrow, but strength. Daniel realized then, she was hiding more than just fear. There was power in her silence. A secret buried deep. And the hunters outside knew it. That was why they would never stop. The cabin grew colder. The shadows pressed closer. Every sound, every whisper, every mark told the same story. This was only the beginning. The silent servant was not just a runaway. She was the key to something greater. And Daniel, without meaning to, had placed himself in the middle of it. The forest held its breath. The shadows circled tighter. And inside the cabin, silence reigned. But silence, Daniel knew, could break at any moment. And when it broke, nothing would ever be the same again. The truth in fragments. The days passed heavy. Daniel no longer counted the hours. Every moment felt the same, filled with waiting. Waiting for the shadows outside to make their move. Waiting for Leora to finally speak. She still worked in silence. Cooking, cleaning, moving softly through the cabin. But Daniel noticed more and more cracks in her mask. When she thought he was not watching, her hands shook, her eyes grew distant. Sometimes she whispered in her strange language, words broken by tears. One morning, Daniel stepped outside and found new signs. Marks burned deep into the earth. Not circles this time, but claw-like symbols. They glowed faint blue, almost alive. Daniel touched one, and his fingers burned with a sharp sting. He pulled back quickly, heart racing. The hunters were getting closer. They wanted him to know. When he returned, he found Leora kneeling in front of the fire, her eyes glowing brighter than ever. She whispered to herself, "Forgive me, forgive me." Daniel's voice was sharp. "Enough of this. Tell me who they are. Tell me why they follow you." She froze. Her lips trembled. Slowly, she lifted her gaze. Her voice was low, heavy with shame. "They are mine, my people, my hunters." Daniel felt his chest tighten. "Your own kind," he said. "Why?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Because I carry what they fear. I carry truth. I carry power. I was not meant to escape. I was not meant to live." Daniel's hands clenched. "What kind of truth?" But she shook her head. "Fragments only. Cannot give you all. If I tell you all, you will turn away. You will not let me stay. Better you think me weak. Better I serve in silence." Daniel's anger flared. "I took you in. I risk my life. And you still hide from me." But when he looked at her face, he saw not defiance but deep fear. She whispered, "Truth is heavy. It kills those who carry it. It kills those who hear it too." That night, Daniel could not sleep. He lay awake listening to her quiet breathing, and he thought of her words. She was not just a lost girl. She was hunted by her own people, because of something she knew, because of something she carried inside. The next day, fragments began to slip. When Daniel brought water from the stream, Leora touched the jug and whispered, "This water, too much iron, poisons slowly. Humans must be careful." Daniel froze. She had never seen the stream before. How did she know? Another time, while fixing his old radio, she placed her hand on the broken wires. The radio sparked, then hummed to life. For a second, Daniel heard whispers. Not human voices, alien voices. searching, calling. Then she pulled her hand away quickly, her face pale. "Forgive me," she whispered. "Fragments escape. I cannot hold them always." Daniel's suspicion grew. She was no simple servant. Her silence was a mask, her obedience a shield. Behind it lay knowledge far beyond human reach, knowledge that could save or destroy. That night, as the fire burned low, Daniel finally asked, "What are you?" Not who, but what. Leora sat in silence for a long time. Finally, she whispered, "I was chosen to inherit, but I refused. I was meant to obey, but I broke. Now I am nothing, just a servant hiding in a human's home." Daniel leaned closer. "Inherit what?" Her glowing eyes met his. The light in them was sharp, almost painful. "Inherit power, a throne, a voice that could command fleets, a gift I never wanted, because power is a chain, and chains kill the soul." Daniel stared at her in shock. She was not just some runaway. She was once a leader, or meant to be one, and her people were hunting her because she refused, because she carried the secret of their strength, and their weakness, fragments of truth, broken pieces, not enough to see the full picture, but enough to change everything. Suddenly the ground shook. A deep hum filled the air. Daniel rushed outside. Above the forest, the sky burned with faint light. Not fire, not stars, but engines, ships moving in silence. Watching from above, Leora stood in the doorway, her face pale. "They are closer now. They know." The fragments call to them. "I cannot hide forever." Daniel felt the weight of her words. He was no longer just protecting a stranger. He was standing between humanity and something far larger. He was holding a secret he did not fully understand. And now the hunters were almost here. Inside the cabin, silence filled the air again. But this silence was not peace. It was the silence before the storm. And Daniel knew, when the truth finally broke free, nothing would ever be the same. The hunters arrive. The forest no longer felt alive. No birds sang. No insects moved. Only silence stretched across the trees. A silence heavy with warning. Daniel woke before dawn. The air outside was cold and sharp. When he stepped onto the porch, he saw them. Dark shapes moving between the trees. Not shadows this time, but figures. Tall, thin, glowing faintly with blue marks across their bodies. The hunters had come. His chest tightened. He knew they were not human. Their movements were too smooth, too silent. They slipped between the trees like smoke, watching, circling, closing in. Inside, Leora stood at the window, her glowing eyes filled with fear. "They are here," she whispered. Her voice shook. "They will not stop. If they find me, they will kill you. If you give me to them, they will leave you alive." Daniel stared at her. "Is that what you want? For me to hand you over?" Her lips trembled, her head lowered. "I promised. I serve, I stay silent. But I cannot ask you to die for me." Daniel's fists clenched. He had no reason to fight for her. She was not his family, not his blood. But something inside him refused to let her go. She was more than a runaway, more than a servant. She was a soul abandoned. And he could not betray her. The hunters moved closer through the forest. Their voices drifted on the wind. Strange, low, broken sounds. Daniel could not understand the words, but he felt the meaning. They were calling her name, calling Leora. She shivered. "They speak of me. They say I am a traitor. They say I must return to chains. Or I must die." Daniel looked at his old rifle leaning near the door. The weapon was small, weak compared to alien power. But it was all he had. He grabbed it and loaded the shells with shaking hands. Leora's eyes widened. "You cannot fight them. They will burn you. They will crush you." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Then let them try." The hunters did not rush. They moved slowly, circling. They wanted to break fear before breaking doors. Every few minutes, Daniel heard the hum of their strange devices. Energy flowing, scanning, searching. The cabin walls shook faintly. The air burned with static. Leora pressed herself into a corner, her hands trembling. Her voice was a whisper. "Please, Daniel. If they enter, do not resist. Let them take me. At least you will live." But Daniel ignored her words. He watched the forest through the window, his heart beating like a drum, his breath heavy. He was only a man. But sometimes, a man's choice mattered more than any weapon. At nightfall, the attack came. The hunters stepped from the trees, 5 of them tall and glowing. Their blue marks burned brighter in the dark, their faces hidden behind masks of metal and glass. Each carried a weapon that pulsed with living light. One stepped forward and raised its hand. The cabin shook. The windows rattled. The door creaked under unseen pressure. Daniel raised his rifle, his hand steady now. "If you want her," he shouted, "you come through me." The hunters paused, their heads tilted. Then a voice spoke, not human but translated through strange sound. "Human, she is not yours, she is ours. Give her and live, protect her, and die." Daniel's chest tightened. He looked back at Leora. She stood pale and trembling. Tears glistened in her glowing eyes. Her lips moved. "Please, let me go." But Daniel shook his head. "No," he said firmly. "You are under my roof, and while you are here, you are under my protection." The hunters raised their weapons. Light flared. The cabin walls burned with heat. Daniel fired. The rifle cracked. One hunter staggered back, sparks bursting from its mask. The others hissed in strange tones. The fight had begun. The cabin filled with fire and smoke. Wood splintered. Glass shattered. Daniel reloaded and fired again. But the hunters were too strong. Their weapons cut through walls like knives through paper. Daniel dove for cover, heart racing. Then it happened. Leora screamed, a sound sharp and powerful. Her glowing eyes blazed brighter than fire. Her hands lifted, trembling, and the air cracked with energy. The hunters froze. Their weapons sputtered. Blue light clashed against blue light, her hidden power finally breaking free. Daniel stared in shock. This was no servant. This was no fragile runaway. This was something else. A being of power chained by fear. And now the chains had snapped. The hunters stepped back, their voices low with alarm. One shouted in their strange tongue. The other spread wide. They feared her. Even with all their weapons, they feared her. Leora's voice broke through the air. "I will not return. I will not kneel. I am free." The hunters raised their weapons again. But this time, Daniel stood at her side, his rifle ready, her power burning. Together they faced the storm. The battle had only begun, and the world would never be the same. The hidden power. The cabin walls burned with smoke. The hunters pressed forward, their weapons glowing. Daniel stood with his rifle breathing heavy. Beside him, Leora's body shook with strange light. Her glowing eyes filled the room with fire. She had hidden this power. She had buried it deep under silence and fear. But now the chains were broken. The hunters had forced it out. The air around her cracked with energy. Blue sparks danced from her fingertips. The hunters hesitated. Even they, cold and merciless, paused in fear. Daniel stared at her. He had seen fragments before. The way she fixed the radio, the way she sensed the water. But this was no fragment. This was something far greater. This was a storm contained in a fragile frame. With a wave of her hand, the ground shook. One hunter flew back against a tree, his body twisted, sparks exploding. Another fired its weapon, but the beam bent away. The light broke apart as if the air itself rejected it. Daniel dropped to his knees, shielding his eyes. The cabin roof cracked. The air howled. This was no servant. This was no weak runaway. This was something meant to rule. Leora's voice cut through the chaos. Sharp, powerful, yet filled with pain. "Leave this place, or I break you." The hunters hissed in their strange tongue. They circled, trying to outflank her. But Daniel noticed something. Her hands trembled. Her breath came in short gasps. This power was tearing at her. It was not gentle. It was a burden she could barely carry. He shouted, "Stop, you'll kill yourself." But she ignored him. Her eyes burned brighter. Her body glowed until it hurt to look at her. Then she screamed. The hunters staggered back. Their weapons shorted, their armor cracked. For a moment, silence fell. Smoke drifted across the broken cabin. The hunters pulled away, not defeated but cautious. One raised a hand, its voice deep and slow. "She is not ready. We wait. We return." Then they vanished into the forest, their shapes fading back into shadows. Daniel dropped his rifle. His chest pounded. He looked at Leora. She had collapsed to the floor, her glowing eyes dim, her body weak and trembling. She looked smaller now, almost fragile again. Daniel rushed to her side. He held her shoulders. "What did you do?" he whispered. She shook her head weakly. "I showed too much. I should not, but I had no choice. They would have killed you." Her voice was faint, her hands cold. Daniel pulled a blanket over her. "You should have told me. You are not a servant. You are something else. Something powerful." Her glowing eyes filled with tears. "I was not meant to show you. You will fear me now. You will send me away." Daniel shook his head. "No, I don't fear you, but I need to know the truth. All of it." Leora closed her eyes. Her voice cracked. "The truth is heavy. It is not gift, it is curse. I was chosen to lead, to command, but I refused. They called me traitor, and they will never forgive. My power is not mine. It is stolen from their chains. Every time I use it, it burns me. It kills me slowly." Daniel's chest tightened. He finally understood. She was hunted not only because she escaped, but because she carried a power that was never meant to be free. A power that belonged to rulers, and rulers could not allow defiance. Outside, the forest was quiet again, but Daniel knew the hunters had not gone far. They were waiting. They had seen her strength. They had seen her weakness too. He stood, his fists clenched. "If they come again, we fight. Together." Leora looked up at him, her lips trembling. "You would fight with me, even knowing I bring death." Daniel nodded. "Yes, because you are more than their chains. And because you are not alone anymore." Her eyes widened. For the first time since he found her, she smiled. A faint, fragile smile. But behind it, a spark of hope. That night, Daniel sat awake by the fire, his rifle across his knees. Leora slept near the flames, her body weak, her breathing soft. He watched her carefully, every flicker of light across her silver skin, every faint glow in her hair. He knew she was more than she said, and he knew the hunters would return stronger. But something had changed. She had shown her hidden power, and now the choice was clear. She could not remain silent forever. She could not remain only a servant. Her secret was out. Her fate would spread into his. The hunters would not stop. The storm was not over. It was only growing. And Daniel realized. Soon the final choice would come. A choice not just for her, but for humanity itself. The final choice. The cabin was broken. Walls cracked, windows shattered, roof burned. Daniel worked through the night, patching what he could. But his eyes always turned to Leora. She lay near the fire, pale and trembling. Her hidden power had saved them, but it had also nearly destroyed her. When dawn came, the forest was quiet again. Too quiet. The hunters had not returned. But Daniel knew they were near, watching, waiting. Shadows never left once they found prey. Leora stirred. Her glowing eyes opened weakly. She whispered, "They will come again. Stronger. More of them. They never forgive. They never stop." Daniel gave her water. He tried to keep his voice calm. "Then we fight again." But she shook her head. Her voice cracked. "No, Daniel. If we fight, they burn your world. If I stay, they hunt forever. If I leave, maybe they stop. Maybe your people live. Her words cut him deeply. It sounded like goodbye. He clenched his fists. No, I didn't save you just to see you taken. You are not theirs anymore. But Leora lowered her gaze. Her silver hair fell across her face. She whispered, I was theirs from birth. Their chains made me. Their power lives inside me. I cannot run from what I am, but I can choose where I end. Daniel froze. She was not asking for freedom. She was asking for sacrifice. She wanted to give herself up to save him, to save humanity. The day passed heavy. The forest remained silent. Daniel sharpened his knife, checked his rifle, but he felt the weight of something greater. This was not just a battle. This was a choice. At dusk, the hunters returned. Not 5 this time, but dozens. Their blue marks glowed like fire across the trees. Their voices filled the air, low and sharp. Daniel could feel the ground trembling under their march. The storm had come. Leora stood slowly, her body weak, her eyes dim, but there was no fear in her face, only calm. She turned to Daniel, her lips trembling as she whispered, Human, thank you, for shelter, for kindness, for choice, but now it is my turn to choose. Daniel stepped forward quickly. No, you don't leave. Not like this. We fight together. Her glowing eyes filled with sorrow. But if I stay, they burn this world. If I go, they take me, and your world lives. His voice broke. You'll die. She smiled faintly. I was already dead when you found me. You gave me days of life I never deserved. That is enough. The hunters moved closer. Their weapons hummed with fire. Daniel raised his rifle, his heart burning. He would not let them take her. He would die first. But Leora lifted her hand. The air around her glowed, her voice sharp and strong. Daniel, please. If you fight, they burn all. If you let me go, your world survives. Daniel's chest tightened. This was the final choice. Protect her and risk everything, or let her go and save his people. The hunters stopped at the edge of the clearing. Their leader stepped forward. Its voice echoed. Give her, human. She is ours. Choose now. Daniel looked at Leora. Her eyes glowed with sorrow and hope, not for herself, but for him, for his world. The silence stretched long. The fire flickered weakly. Daniel's hands shook on his rifle. His heart screamed to fight, but her eyes begged for release. Finally, he lowered the weapon. The hunters hissed with triumph. But Leora raised her hand, stopping them. Her voice rang clear. I do not kneel. I do not return. If I go free. The hunters growled in rage. Energy sparked, weapons lifted. But before they could strike, her body glowed with blinding light. Blue fire surged through the clearing. The hunters staggered, their voices breaking. Daniel shielded his eyes. He felt heat, wind, thunder, then silence. When he opened his eyes, the forest was empty. The hunters were gone. Leora was gone. Only the faint glow of burned earth remained, and the echo of her voice. Live, human, live for both of us. Daniel fell to his knees. The rifle slipped from his hands. His chest felt heavy. The cabin stood broken behind him. The forest quiet around him. He was alive, but emptiness filled the air. She had chosen. She had given herself. And in that choice, she had saved his world. Yet Daniel knew deep inside, this was not the end. The hunters would return one day, and maybe somewhere in the stars, Leora still lived, waiting, watching, silent but never truly gone. The final choice had been made, but the story of the human and the alien beauty was far from over.